Through the soft drizzle of a Seoul morning, the narrow alleys of Bukchon-Hanok village shimmered like a watercolor painting. The roofs of traditional Hanoks glistened under the silver mist. The scent of roasted coffee beans drifted from a small cafe tucked at the corner of an uphill lane. Inside that quiet place, Yoonhai's attic, Kim Yoo Jung sat by the window, her fingers wrapped around a porcelain cup, watching the raindrops merge and slide down the glass. It was her first official interview in months. Outside, the world buzzed with curiosity, yet inside, time seemed to slow, holding its breath for her to finally speak. She smiled faintly when I entered, her expression calm but her eyes holding something unspoken, a tenderness tinged with hesitation. Dressed in a beige coat and a soft cream scarf, looked every bit the image of a woman who had learned the beauty of silence. There was a light in her that morning, quiet, but resolute. When the first question was asked, she didn't rush to answer. Instead, she looked out the window again, watching a leaf drift to the wet ground. It wasn't about the rumors, she said softly, voice like the whisper of wind brushing through ginkgo trees. It was about timing. For months, speculation had surrounded her name and Song Kang's. Ever since they starred together in the hit series My Demon Heartbeat, fans had been convinced that their on-screen chemistry was too natural, too effortless to be mere acting. The rumors only grew when photos surfaced of them walking together near the Han River, both wearing caps, both laughing in a way that looked far too familiar. Agencies remained silent. Tabloids screamed louder. And the internet did what it always does, build stories from stolen moments. Through it all, Kim Yoo Jung stayed quiet, choosing stillness over denial. And now, in the warmth of that hidden cafe, she was ready to tell her side, not to confirm gossip, but to share what it truly meant to open one's heart. The first time she met Song Kang, she recalled. During the initial screen test for My Demon Heartbeat, it was a chilly morning in late February. He was already exhausted from a previous shoot. He arrived late, slightly breathless, bowing deeply in apology. He was nervous, she remembered, laughing softly. But there was something sincere about the way he looked at people. He didn't try to impress anyone, he just was. When the camera started rolling, their eyes met for the first time. It was supposed to be a simple line reading. Yet something unexpected happened, an energy, a quiet pulse between them that neither could quite explain. The director called it undeniable synergy. She, however, called it a strange calm. During filming, they spent countless nights together on set, not in a romantic sense, but as two professionals learning each other's rhythms. Had a habit of humming between takes. She often teased him for it. Once, during a long outdoor shoot, sudden drizzle forced everyone to take cover. Song Kang had only one umbrella and without a word, he held it above her, getting soaked himself. It was nothing grand, she said. But sometimes it's the small things that stay with you. That night, when she returned to her hotel, she found herself thinking of that moment more than the script for the next day. Still, she reminded herself that such feelings had no place in their world, the world of lights, cameras, and fleeting attachments. It's just acting, she told herself repeatedly. And yet, the more she tried to convince herself, the harder it became to ignore the way he made her laugh. His eyes seemed to hold stories only she could read. Then came the last day of filming on Jeju Island. Sunset burned gold over the sea as they wrapped the final scene. Everyone was busy packing up, saying farewells. Song Kang approached her quietly, handed her a small white handkerchief embroidered with the word, "Thank you." No note, no explanation, just that. She thought it was a polite gesture, nothing more. But days later, when she unpacked her things in Seoul, she found herself tracing the stitched letters again and again, as if they were saying something she hadn't yet understood. Weeks turned into months. Went on, new scripts, new appearances, endless schedules. But somewhere beneath it all, that calm warmth lingered. Sometimes, during long drives, she would remember the sound of his laughter by the sea. Other times, when rain fell against her window, she'd think of the umbrella, the silence. He never tried too hard. She would shake her head, smile to herself. Move on. At least, that's what she told herself she was doing. When I asked her if she ever read the articles, the ones filled with speculation and blurry photos, she laughed. I tried not to, she said. But my mother would send me links sometimes and say, Make you two sound like a drama. Maybe it was easier to let people think whatever they wanted. Sometimes. Silence protects what words can destroy. Her tone was thoughtful. Not defensive, as if she had made peace with the noise that followed her name. The cafe grew quieter as the rain began to fade. Outside, sunlight began to spill through the clouds, washing the streets in a soft golden hue. Turned her face toward the light, and for a moment, like she belonged entirely to that calm, glowing morning. So when did you know? I asked. Realize it wasn't just friendship. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stirred her coffee, watching the ripples in the cup. Pause stretched long enough to feel like part of her story. Finally, she looked up, eyes shimmering with something both tender and sad. I didn't know it was love, she said slowly. Till I realized I was waiting for him, even when I told myself not to. Her words lingered in the air like perfume. Outside, the rain had stopped completely. The last few drops slid down the glass. The sunlight before disappearing. In that quiet moment, I understood that her confession wasn't dramatic or sudden, it was gentle. Like the way autumn turns the leaves without anyone noticing. Yoo Jung smiled again. Her voice soft but steady. Sometimes, you don't need a big moment. You just need to feel safe enough to stop pretending. She reached for her cup, took a slow sip, and looked out the window once more, at the same alley where she had walked in earlier, now bathed in golden light. I left the cafe, the barista whispered. She's been coming here for years. I turned back and saw her silhouette against the light. Still seated by the window, still calm. Maybe that was love's quietest form, not fireworks or confessions, but a stillness that feels like coming home. The door closed behind me, the soft chime echoing down the narrow street. The city was waking again. Alive with stories. Yet one story, hers, was only just beginning to unfold beneath the Seoul sky. Light of dawn crept across the horizon of Jeju Island, painting the sea in shades of pink and silver. It carried the scent of tangerine blossoms, and the waves lapped gently against the black volcanic rocks. Been months since my demon heartbeat wrapped its final scene. But the memories of that place, the laughter, the silences, the unspoken glances, still lingered for Kim Yoo Jung. When she returned to Jeju for a commercial shoot the following spring, the island felt both familiar and strange. Emotion spread before her. The same narrow paths between stone fences. But now it all felt heavier. As if the air itself remembered him. He wasn't supposed to be there. She recalled with a faint smile, her gaze distant. It was just me and the crew. But when I arrived, I saw him, sitting quietly by the shore. Kang had come to Jeju for his own project, coincidentally filming not far from her set. When their eyes met across the windy coast, as though time had folded in on itself. He waved, she said, and for a moment, forgot all the months that had passed. They spoke briefly, about work, about the weather, never about what lay beneath those polite exchanges. But as the sun dipped lower, turning the sea into molten gold, something inside her stirred. That evening, after everyone had left, she stayed behind at the beach, watching the horizon fade into violet. The sound of the tide reminded her of the night they had shared an umbrella, the quiet between them more intimate than words. It wasn't that I missed him, she confessed. It was that the world felt quieter when he wasn't around. Back in Seoul, life moved forward as it always did, interviews, scripts, rehearsals. Kang's career was rising swiftly, so was hers. Even amid flashing lights and crowded red carpets. Thought of him sometimes returned. Soft but persistent. Like a melody she couldn't forget. Rumors began again, whispers that he was seen with another actress, dinner photos, anonymous tips. She didn't react. She told herself she had no right to. I thought maybe the story between us was meant to stay unfinished, she said, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. Not every connection ends in love. And not every silence means indifference. But silence, she would soon learn, has its own way of breaking. One night in late summer, long after midnight, her phone buzzed. A message from him, just 4 words, "Can we talk?" She stared at the screen for a long time, her heart pounding not from surprise but recognition. Like a door I had closed quietly was opening again, she said. She didn't reply immediately. Instead, went for a walk. The city's night air cool against her skin. The streets were empty. The lamplight soft and golden. She didn't know what she wanted to say, or even if she wanted to say anything. The next morning, he sent another message. No pressure. Just a time and a place, a quiet cafe in Bukchon. The same one where their first interview scene in My Demon Heartbeat had been filmed. She hesitated for a day, maybe two, before deciding to go. I told myself it would just be closure, she said, smiling at the irony. That afternoon, the air was crisp, carrying the scent of roasted chestnuts from street vendors nearby. She arrived early, heart steady but uncertain. Was already there, sitting by the window, the same window where she had once filmed a tearful goodbye scene for their drama. The resemblance was uncanny, almost poetic. But when he saw her, offering a small, shy smile. It's been a while, he said. Soft, eyes searching. They talked, not about the past, but about everything around it. About work, travel, even silly things like favorite ramen shops. But underneath the casual words, there was a pulse. Steady and growing. You know, he said at one point, looking down at his hands. I never stopped thinking about that night on Jeju. I still have that umbrella. Her laughter came softly, tinged with disbelief. You kept it. I did, he said simply. Because I didn't know how else to keep you. For a moment, the world outside seemed to disappear, the noise, the people, the flashing cameras of their lives. Only that small corner of the cafe, the fading afternoon light, and two people realizing that timing, after all, finally choosing them. He didn't ask her to love him, and she didn't promise anything in return. Sat in silence for a while, their shoulders almost touching, their reflections faintly visible in the glass. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "Took your time." He smiled. "I wanted to make sure I was worth the wait." The city outside was painted in autumn gold. As the sun sank lower, light spilled through the window, tracing their faces in soft glow. He looked at him then, not the actor everyone admired. The man who had waited quietly in the spaces between her days. In that moment, the answer she had avoided for so long came to her not as a revelation, but as a simple truth. I accepted his heart, she told me later. Not because he tried to win me over, but because he never stopped being kind. I think real love isn't about grand gestures, it's about quiet patience. It's about feeling at home when you didn't realize you were searching for one. Outside the cafe, the street lamps flickered on one by one, and the air turned crisp with the promise of evening. Walked together down the narrow lane. The world hushed around them. He didn't reach for her hand, and she didn't offer it, not yet. But there was a new understanding between them. Something wordless and serene. I used to think love had to be dramatic, she mused. That it needed to feel like fireworks or storms. But when I saw him again, I realized love could also be still, like the sea before dawn. Like the first breath of autumn. As the last light of day disappeared behind the roofs of the hammocks, she turned to him and smiled, not as an actress, a public figure, but as a woman who had finally allowed herself to feel. He smiled back. And that was enough. Later, when the interview came to an end, I asked her one final question. If you had to describe what you have now with him, what would you call it? She paused, considering her words carefully. A love story, she said at last. More like a homecoming. She thanked me, bowed politely, and left the cafe. I watched her walk down the stone path lined with lanterns, her coat fluttering in the wind. The city hummed quietly, alive and infinite. And yet she moved as if the world had finally found its rhythm around her. Before disappearing around the corner, I glanced back once, not at me, but at the sky. The clouds had parted, revealing a single, bright star. Sometimes, she had said earlier, doesn't arrive with fireworks. It stays quietly, waiting for the right season to be seen. Seoul night. As the first chill of winter brushed the air, it felt as though that season had finally come.